Welcome to the Hollywood Scholar. I'm Jed Morgan, and today is rather a slow news day for the entertainment industry, at least until D23 ramps up. None of the stuff from the last few days interests me. The Disney Pixar stuff doesn't interest me, but I may do a video on the Marvel stuff once that comes out. But until then, things are kind of slow, so I decided to go back to a Old Faithful and Forbes with an article that they have about the Rings of Power. And the interesting thing about this is it's so contrary to a lot of the other Forbes and just general articles that I reviewed about Rings of Power and seen about Rings of Power, because it kind of breaks the narrative to a certain extent. It still, fights back against the normal narrative, but it at least tries to have its own opinion that is negative towards the show snuck in there. And it's just a really interesting read, despite me disagreeing with several aspects of it. But this is from the Forbes. The Rings of Power has a Galadriel problem, and I think a lot of people can 100% agree with that. She is the worst problem of the show, mainly from her writing, but her performance is just so stale to begin with, and it's honestly bad in my opinion. And the writing is just some of the worst stuff. She is insufferable, and that's a lot of the stuff that this article goes into, actually, which I was very impressed with. And the article actually starts out with some really good comments here, where it talks about Galadriel smiling for the first time and describes it as it's a radical expression change for a character who unfortunately has virtually no emotional range. That I 100% agree with. The actress, I don't know if she can do good stuff in other performances, but she really only has scowl. That's like her big expression, is she can scowl. That's about it. And so the smile was very disconcerting, especially because it looked like it was forced and honestly looked like it was painful. It was very weird to see someone who'd only scowled for 3 hours of television to finally smile. But he goes on, unfortunately has virtually no range. Galadriel wear almost exclusively very shades of scowl, just like I was saying. Perhaps the occasional glower or puzzlement, but mostly she just frowns and glares at people, either in gritty determination or impatience and frustration. And that's a lot of the criticism that has been labeled at the character, because A, this isn't the character of Galadriel, but B, it's just an incredibly unlikable character to be the main character of a show of this scope. It's just really off-putting to the audience, and people really are genuinely reacting poorly to this character because she is such a bad character. And it's very interesting to see a mainstream access media site like Forbes reacting so vitriolically to this character and showing some honesty. Now, there's some things that I don't agree with later on in the article, but overall, this feels like a genuine position. Even though I don't agree with it, it feels genuine, and that's something that I haven't really experienced from mainstream media in a very long time. So I have to give this guy, Eric Kane, praise, because this article at least feels genuine. Maybe a little bit confused with some of the narratives that are going on, but at least trying to be honest and genuine. And I have to give him praise for that. Then he continues talking about the Mary Sue. He says that's not really an accurate term in his opinion. She is far too unlikable to be a Mary Sue, for one thing. That is impressive coming from the mainstream media. She's too unlikable to be a Mary Sue. Now, he goes into the definition of Mary Sue for a while. I personally believe she is a Mary Sue, mainly because of the changes in comparison to what her character is supposed to be. But there is an argument to be made and some interesting discussion to be had there. But she's too unlikable. How do you be too unlikable? How is it possible to be too unlikable to be Mary Sue? That is not a good thing to say, and I really respect this man for coming out and saying that on a platform like this, but I find that hilarious that he just comes out there with some fire like that. And so he goes into the lore a little bit, saying, oh, it's all explainable. I'm okay with her being a warrior and all that. And he tries to come at it from a very neutral, non-lore, respective approach, and I really can't blame him for that. I disagree on the lore stuff and his interpretation of it, and his lack of concern with her being a warrior. But overall, it's not from a vitriolic and anti-fan perspective per se. It's more just, hey, this is how I feel about it, and I can respect this man for that. And that is such an odd thing for me to say about an article and a mainstream media writer like this. And yet she acts like a petulant teenager despite everything that she's seen and all that. And that is very off-putting as well. So much so that Elendil actually tells her she reminds him of his children. Now, I think that line is terrible and written horrifically. The actor does fine enough delivering it. But it is an interesting thing, is that, yeah, she's acting like so much of a child despite her millennia of life. That's the thing that the writers and Morpha Clark talked about before the show came out, is like, oh, this is a young Galadriel, so what does that look like? No, she's pretty well, like, in her prime. She's not young in any way, shape, or form. She's thousands upon thousands of years old. She's, if anything, midlife compared to when she actually goes back to the Undying Lands. This is probably midlife for her. Shouldn't be acting like a child, but apparently that was the approach that both the writers and Morpha Clark decided to take this character, and we're very proud of that fact. And so, yeah, that's why she kind of comes across as childish, as this author points out. His people live for hundreds of years, but he's not close to old as inexperienced as Galadriel. But somehow the Rings of Power wants us to believe that this ancient elven being is as diplomatic as one of Durin's stones. That is a biting indictment of a metaphor. And I love it because, yeah, she, in that scene and the one previously when she meets Muriel, is just incredibly off putting. And that's her worst scene because she comes across as the most unlikable in that sequence and really Numenor in general than she has in the entire show to date. And comparing her to Durin's Rock when it comes to diplomatic abilities is very accurate because, yeah, she's just insulting everyone throughout this entire thing, like acting like she's so much better. She comes across as incredibly racist in Numenor, incredibly racist. And then in the Adrift, though, she was upset that they were being racist against her on the raft initially when they found her ears. It's a double standard. She's not a good character. She's racist now, too. And that's not something that you want to say about Galadriel of all characters. And she's already struggling to be a good person or a likable person. Then you throw in some racism and it's done for. People don't like her for a lot of reasons. But being as diplomatic as Durin's Stone is a good comparison that really drives down her likability even further, which was already far too low to be a main character. After 3 episodes, I have to say I sadly admit that I think the casting choice here was a mistake. And I agree with that as well. The writing is the bigger issue, but Morfydd Clark just isn't right for the role in so many different ways, or at least she's been directed to do such a poor job with this that it's incredibly hard to see her in the role and to even watch her because she is so insufferable. He goes on to say, like, he likes most of the cast. Sure, Morfydd Clark is fine, trying to be very diplomatic about it, and I was very impressed with his approach overall. He's just trying to get his opinion across without being offensive and going against the narrative too much that he might lose his job. I'm okay with this article overall. I don't agree with everything, obviously, and I hate that he has to fit within the narrative. I don't know if that's his opinion, like he purposely wants to be part of that narrative, but or if he's being forced to be, but overall it feels genuine, at least in my opinion. And he talks about the writing for a moment here, and it's like, yeah, the writing needed to be better, and some of the other stuff he says is fine. He's enjoying the show overall, which I 100% disagree with, and he kind of has a tirade here about how it's not woke and that's nonsensical and that everyone's, review bombing. So that's when things get a little disingenuous and drives down the overall article quality as a whole, is that last couple paragraphs. But overall, he has some interesting comments about Galadriel, and I'm very surprised to see a place like Forbes talking about a female empowerment character like Galadriel in this show to such an extent and having some vitriolic words for her and some great metaphors and stuff that I really agree with when it comes to his evaluation of her character. And it's very impressive to see. I thought I'd do a positive article review today because, yeah, it's just so odd to see something like this that feels so genuine for the majority of it. And is the narrative breaking? Are we going to see more articles like this of people at the mainstream access media site saying, hey, we actually didn't like this. This isn't good. We don't like these characters. And, well, maybe. We may see more articles like these coming out. I think the big narrative push is always in the first couple weeks, and then by the end of the show, things kind of die off. That's what we saw with Kenobi and a lot of other shows like that. So it'd be really interesting to see how this develops, if this leads to more articles like this where some honesty and genuine opinions are allowed to break through, but we'll have to wait and see. And it can't get worse than it was for those couple weeks, at least in my opinion. It can't get worse than it was. So anything is possible, and going up is the only way forward for the access and mainstream media sites. But anyway, that's all I have for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Anon. If you like what I do here and want to see good, compelling stories that Hollywood will no longer give you, check out my book series, Odyssey of a Phoenix, a mythological epic about philosophy, morality, and modern-day mental illness issues. Books 1, Down in Flames, and Book 2, Apocalypse Then, currently on sale. Book 3, Kill the Dark, coming soon.